Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Archaeology Today podcast, where we tackle prehistoric hierarchies, focusing on how these structures influence gender roles of the past and inform those of today. My name's Lauren Sullivan.
And my name is Ben Pickering, and today we are going to be discussing the Lakota Sioux Native people, focusing on the inner workings of prehistoric society, the struggle for power among marginalized groups within the tribe, and comparing the ways that women gained influence within their community.
That's right, Ben. We're going to be talking about one of my personal favorite minority subgroups, known as the Winaxka, which roughly translates to female soldiers in English, and how these prehistoric women fought for dominance and power within their communities. However, we will be contrasting this point of view of power through participation in tribe violence with that of the role of motherhood within the tribe and the highly valued role of caretaking.
Let's begin with the role of motherhood within the Lakota before we get into the Winaxka.
Plains women are sometimes characterized as beasts of burden in academia because of the harsh nature of their specific tasks within the Plains and Lakota cultures. The Lakota were a nomadic, hunting, and warring community that relied mainly on the buffalo population for food, hides, and even shelter, meaning that life, especially for Lakota women, was hard and often unpleasant.
For now, I think we should talk about the religious aspects of the Lakota Sioux tribe that greatly influenced how women were viewed in their society. Though the Lakota was an arguably male-dominated community, women were central to the tribe's culture both symbolically and religiously.
Symbolically, women were seen as literal creators of life and were greatly praised and valued for their biological abilities to give birth, as well as the work they did after the fact to raise the children and keep the home. While this may seem like a problematic example of biological essentialism within the archaeological field, the role of homemaker was a much more highly respected job in the Lakota society than it is in our American society today, as it was viewed as an absolute necessity to the tribe's very survival.
Religiously, the Lakota identified the sun as their universal father and the earth as their universal mother, meaning that the Lakota people viewed their women as extensions of this earth mother spirit and were therefore vital to the continuation of their people. The conscious choice to associate women with the life-giving nature of their mother spirit speaks to the way in which they were valued in the community.
This is a perfect transition into one of our main discussion points of how the Lakota women asserted their own influence through motherhood and their role as the primary caretakers within the tribe. The Lakota people were taught their specific gender roles from a very young age, as mothers would make their daughters dolls and dresses to play with, while sons were given handmade bows and arrows crafted by their fathers. This type of gendered play evolved into sets of gendered values, with men being taught bravery, fortitude, and wisdom, and women being taught industry, hospitality, and kindness, with chastity valued for unmarried women, and fidelity and fertility for married women.
As the Lakota were mainly a warring community, female contributions are often downplayed and even discounted by mainstream archaeological researchers and in articles in American society today. However, for the Lakota, womanhood was an essential piece of their culture, as their ability to create children was a powerful act, as well as the massive amounts of influence they had on their families, husbands, and communities through more covert means.
I think this is a great opportunity to close this discussion on motherhood with a quote from feminist researcher Paula Gunn Allen's book, The Sacred Hoop, Recovering the Feminine in American Indian Traditions. It says, "Even among Plains people, long considered the most male-oriented Indians, power was and is gained, accrued, mediated, and dispensed only through the grace and beneficence of female influence." Such a beautiful and articulate way to end this portion of our discussion.
I agree. Now I think it's time to get into a discussion about the Winaxka. While there were varied socially accepted roles for women, there were also reports of women who denied the prototypical gender roles and became warrior women. Despite the fact that women were not allowed to join war parties, many engaged in war anyway. Some even led war expeditions, and if they performed admirably, they became Winaxka, which were female soldiers.
Scholars are only able to speculate why women would decide to participate in the wars. Counting coups, stealing guns or horses, scalping, and killing were all considered esteemed and glorious. Women who could do such acts were respected and could even achieve independent wealth. The Lakota women being able to achieve independent wealth was an unprecedented accomplishment at the time, and is a testament to the bravery and leadership that the Lakota women exemplified.
Even the women who chose not to participate directly in warfare were still important to the military activity of the males in their tribes. Sometimes women would even pressure their husbands to steal more horses in order to acquire more wealth, and some would even encourage their husbands to capture other women to be co-wives in helping with domestic duties. This highlights the status of the Lakota women and reveals that, in some cases, they even held more power than their male partners. Native women realized how important warfare was to their families and their communities, so they were supportive of and even active in it, even if that meant pressuring their husbands to perform unconventional methods.
To a certain extent, scholars have theorized about Native women because so little has been published about them beyond male-produced, ethnocentric written documents. These accounts were extremely biased and ignorant, conveying Lakota women as either the princess or the prostitute, the unfailingly admirable, beautiful Indian women, or the dangerous, highly sexed, and lustful women. In other circumstances, women were either portrayed as the dismal drudge of the Lakota warrior societies or the matriarchal matron.
Historically, the Lakota were a male-dominant warrior society, yet Lakota women maintained high status, particularly because the feminine culture, hero, was so important to Lakota belief systems.
Before contact with European peoples, the Lakota culture emphasized the connection of both genders that allowed their communities to be successful and survive. Women and men often shared equally in social, economic, and ritual roles. Native American women were vital to community survival. They controlled material property and food, held positions of political importance, status, and power, educated children about traditional ceremonies and practices, taught family history, and were active participants in war. The continuation of most Lakota Indian tribes' oral traditions relied on female power.
Both the role of mother and the role of female warrior were extremely valued in Lakota society. Much of the choice of how women chose to gain power in their community came down to personal preference. Being a mother meant your power came from influence within the home. Raising your children with your preferred values, influencing your husband's decisions, and through other similar means. Being a female warrior offered you more tangible examples of power like independence, respect, and possible wealth.
I think this discussion makes a really interesting comparison to modern-day life. Whether you're a female CEO or a housewife, you influence the lives of others as well as your own in very real ways. Power is not merely given. As women, we must fight for it in whatever circumstance we are in and prove to others that we are worthy of it. That's all the time we have for today, but thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope to see you again next week on Archaeology Today.